definitely committed a lot more towards MMA this year, and I'm obviously not going to give up on jiu-jitsu ever. Still going to knock off those huge, the bigger things, whether it's the ADCC or CJI or whatever, but definitely a little bit more fixated on MMA this year.
He is, of course, one of the top grapplers in the world, but he's also about to make his third appearance in mixed martial arts coming up in just a matter of days. And it's always my great pleasure to speak to Kade Ruotolo. Kade, how are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much. How about yourself?
I'm fantastic, man. Thank you for taking time for me as always. It's kind of funny. I know we talked before your debut, and when they reached out, and I was like, yeah, of course, I love talking to Kade. I was like, man, third fight already. Is it moving fast?
That's how I feel about it, right? I'm like, geez, it's just a blink of an eye. We're already at 3 fights. That's crazy.
Yeah. How, I mean, listen, obviously very successful, two first round wins, two first round submissions, but the training I always know is the hard part. So how has it been just that continuous transition, that continued evolution, learning MMA?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, the training is always the hard part. And yeah, it's been amazing. It's been all, obviously there's roads, injuries, all different types of things that come with it. But as far as overall, it's been an amazing progression. I'm really happy with how I've been progressing. I was just saying that recently too, it sucks because, I'm putting all this work into MMA and I'm feeling like I'm really getting so much sharper on the feet, on all these different aspects. And then my brother's been injured, right? He's just coming back and I'll spar with him. And I'm like, dude, you're just as good as me still. I'm like, what's going on? So my brother's gonna tear some people up this year for sure. But yeah, I'm feeling really really excited and ready and stoked on the progression.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we knew day one because of who you are, because of your background. You're gonna get everyone's gonna be targeting. They want to be the guy to beat Kade Ruotolo. That's how it's gonna go. And every single opponent's gonna go out of their way. Do not go to the ground with this guy. So has that made you work even that much harder? Because I know at some point you'd love a knockout, but I mean, obviously, just like when we get a really high level wrestler coming into MMA who had a name, people are going to know that going in. So you're getting the absolute best out of every single opponent you're facing. You're not just some random 2-0 fighter.
Right. You're absolutely right. Everybody, there's no secret what I'm coming to do, right? So yeah, everybody for sure, trying everything about wrestling defense and jiu-jitsu defense and all that. Thankfully, I really believe in it takes a lot more time to master a defense for something than it does. It's always the more time you put in offensively, usually you're going to spend more time offensively attacking. That person will be defending that position, if that makes sense. So if that math works out, then yeah, we should be good.
Yeah. I always say that, like, because I'm a big wrestling guy, and I always say, like, when I watch like the NCAA wrestling championships or I watch the Olympics, like what you can do in wrestling in that aspect is different than MMA wrestling. There's guys who have been great MMA wrestlers who never won titles, they were never champions, but they were, they came up in college or whatever. How has that adaptation worked for you? Because you hear it all the time, like in jiu-jitsu, no one's going to punch you back when you get a hold. You know what I mean? Like you're not getting punched in that moment. So how have you adapted your grappling game for MMA? Because obviously it's still been very effective, but that's something I'm sure you're constantly working on to like adapt your jiu-jitsu for MMA.
Yeah. Great observation as well. Yeah, it for me, it's one of the main difference is just not being so comfortable taking bottom position. Like it's easy to go on a guillotine you think you have, and then you're on bottom and you're like, dang, now I'm on bottom and pushing or whatever, right? So that's been one of the main things. But as far as the transition goes, the gloves, I don't feel like make too big of a difference. I've been stoked on that. I thought they would make a bigger difference than they do. And what else? Yeah, I think honestly that the transition hasn't been too much. Once I grab the guy, I feel like a lot of it's the same. I guess the only thing you could say is the striking cardio is much different than the jiu-jitsu cardio. So if you do get tired while striking, you get tired up top and then you grab them, it could be a lot more difficult to execute what you want to do. But as far as that goes, I've been feeling super confident in my ability to merge my striking to my grappling, and everything's been feeling fluid.
How has the progression been for you in terms of like your goals and aspirations for this sport? This is your third fight. You had two last year, in addition to a very busy grappling career. And I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. But now you're going into 2025. Your first fight is going to be in February. Like, do you set goals for yourself at this year? Because listen, everyone moves at a different speed. I remember talking to Gary Tonin when he came in, and he went at a different speed than Damian Maia went. Everyone's got a different speed of how they're going. So like, how have you felt in terms of like your progression and where you're at going into your third fight? Like in terms of, are you like, hey, I'm just going to take you one fight at a time, and when I get to that level where I'm ready to take on ranked competition or championships, I'll get there. In terms of your confidence, like, man, I feel like I'm already there. Like, how are you feeling going into this new year?
Um, yeah, in the most humble way possible. I'm extremely confident in my ability to take on pretty much anyone out there my size, my weight. I think I could submit anyone in the world. And I feel, you know, I had to talk myself up or whatever. I feel I'm very tough on the feet as well. So I feel like I could take a hit, I could give one, and I could submit anyone in the world. So I think with that being said, I'm only getting better in my wrestling. I'm only getting so much better in my striking, and I think if everything stays on track, I think within a year or two, I don't think anyone can stop me at any rate or any
Can
size.
I can I ask, is there any part of you, I mentioned earlier, listen, you're only going into your third fight right now, but how much do you want to knock out? Like, come on, be honest, because I know you said when we first talked, like you've always been a fan of doing Muay Thai and doing training, but obviously your goal at that point was Jiu-Jitsu. In the back of your mind, is there always like a little bit of like, man, I really would like to get a knockout here?
Oh, you already know it. I was close to my last fight too. I looking back, I'm like, man, I wish I just TKO'd him instead of Darston him. I think I definitely could have just finished him out there. But yeah, it'll come with time. Not gonna rush it, not gonna force anything. But I definitely think it's gonna come with time for sure. It could be this fight, it could be the next, but it's definitely probable. I think I got some pretty decent hands, and I'm excited to show them.
Can I ask, like, how have you balanced your preparation? Because one thing I've learned watching really high level either wrestlers or grapplers coming to MMA, of course, again, as I said, every single guy you fight is going to go out of their way to not go to the ground with you. So obviously that's why you develop these other aspects of your game and you become a good wrestler, you become a good striker, all these different things. But listen, your bread and butter, your skill is jujitsu. So like I've seen this happen. I remember talking to Ryan Bader years ago about this. He's like, I fell in love with boxing and I forgot that I was a freaking all-American wrestler. And he had a couple of knockout losses. He's like, I just got it in my head that I was a striker and I stopped wrestling. It backfired on me. So like, have you found that balancing act yet of like, I want to work on my striking. I want to become elite in all areas, but anyone who goes to the ground with me is going to be in trouble. So I got to imagine there's a little bit of a balancing act even in your own head.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my professor Galval is a super is a solid person to tell me that and spread that message to me. He goes, I've seen a lot of greats in the UFC, and I've watched them also. I've seen their rises and I've seen their downfalls. And he goes, to me, a lot of the guys who stopped growing, whether the guys that stopped training on their main, which is so say Gilbert Burns, for example, like Dorino, professor's like, yeah, man, I love Dorino, by the way, it's the coolest guy ever. He's like, yeah, man, Dorino's always training jiu-jitsu every day, and you can see his improvement. He goes, I think he started focusing a lot more on wrestling and striking, so less than jiu-jitsu, and you could see when he got to those exchanges, like in one of some of his last couple of fights, where he'd be taking the back, finishing with the choke. He's in like a cradle type position, where he's kind of letting those not those roots take over, kind of letting the newer things take over. So I just kind of make sure that doesn't happen. That way, at the end of the day, remember what got me to where I'm at today and went back to my jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely. Now, again, your fight is just a matter of days away, but can I ask, like, because we are at the beginning of the year, do you have kind of like a game plan for how you want to handle 2025? Because this is your third fight. I imagine you want to I assume you probably want to get a couple more MMA fights, but obviously you're still very, very active in the jiu-jitsu community. I do want to ask you about the Craig Jones thing in a minute, but like how, like, do you map out your year or do you just kind of take it like, hey, I'm going to fight this guy next week, win, and then see what comes next? Or do you kind of map out and say, this is what I have planned for the year?
There's kind of like there's like a rough draft plan where there's, I want to definitely fight as many times as my body will let me MMA. And whatever jiu-jitsu, whatever there is, that's the biggest and the hardest. That's what we do, So that's kind of been the strategy the last really year and a half. Just ADCC, CJI, whatever it is. That's the cream of the crop that we can compete in jiu-jitsu, and then kind of as our side conquest MMA. I feel like this year that's kind of switched up a bit. Now it's been like main focus, at least for me, a little bit more. It's been more MMA. I just definitely want to give everything I have and make sure there's no question marks at the end of my career. If there, what if I did that or what, so definitely committed a lot more towards MMA this year. And I'm obviously not going to give up on jiu-jitsu ever. still going to knock off those huge, the bigger things, whether it's the ADCC or CJI or whatever, but definitely a little bit more fixated on MMA this year.
Now, be honest with me, Kade.
Yeah.
You win $1 million, CGI, awesome, amazing. Did you buy yourself something nice? Come on, you don't get $1 million payday every day.
You want to see the car I got? I wonder if I can.
Oh, you got a car?
Show you. Let me show you. You'll be surprised though, because you see that 4Runner outside.
I do. Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
The green one. Everyone's tripping out what I got. I'm like, what? It's a 91 4Runner. I got a sick deal on. It's a manual 4-wheel drive 91. It's got 90,000 miles on it, original miles. I couldn't believe it. I had to get it. But other than that, yeah, I just no big crazy purchases or nothing like that. People don't realize like that million gets taxed like 30% right away. And I said I was gonna split it with my brother, right? So it goes from 1 million to 700 to 350, and then before you even have it, I'm like, all right, I'm just investing this little chunk into some land in Costa Rica. But yeah, nothing too crazy.
That's amazing. You share that with your brother. I think that's awesome. Like, I mean, I know you and your brother have come up together, and obviously you guys are very, very close. That's amazing. You did that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's got to keep the word,
Yeah. Now we've seen this last year. I talked to you about this, before your debut. Doing MMA, coming into jiu-jitsu, the growth of jiu-jitsu. I mean, one championship has put a lot into it. Obviously, you were the champion there. We've seen it now, even the UFC with the Fight Pass Invitational. Mikey Musumeci's over there. Obviously, you got Craig Jones is going to come back again this year. Have you been like excited to see just the huge explosion? Because back in the day, like when I first started, when I was first coming up in the sport, like you did ADCC and that was it. Like that's all there really was. Now there's like huge tournaments, and again, you made $1 million. Like that would not have happened 10 years ago.
Right. It's amazing. It's mind-boggling. It's crazy to see, and who would have thought? I mean, it's almost like there's starting to become more money in jiu-jitsu than MMA in a sense from an amateur point going on. Like when even when you get signed to UFC or One Championship or whatever, when you're first signed, you're not making much more than 15 and 15 maybe or something like that, right? So yeah, to be able to go out there and all these different events, One Championships with the 50K bonuses, as long as you pretty much give a solid submission, and with the UFC Fight Pass guys, and then there's all these different promotions giving hefty bonuses and hefty paychecks. So I think it's just super awesome to see for the sport of jiu-jitsu. It definitely was something that I thought would happen, just not as soon as it is. So it's super cool to see.
Yeah, I know you mentioned like you're not totally decided, because I know Craig Jones is changing the format this year. It's going to be team versus team, and obviously the AC. So have you decided, like, because I know Mackenzie Dern talked about this after her last fight. Like she had a blast doing CGI, and she said she'd like to do it again, but it's always about timing and opportunity. So have you decided? Do you want to do Craig Jones again? Because it's different this year. It's a team format, or are you thinking about maybe doing ADCC? Where's your head at?
Yeah, I think I all I know really is that it's a team format, and I haven't looked into how many people are on the team and how you go against the teams, so I honestly have to look at the logistics of it and see if it makes sense. But it's definitely on the list. It's definitely on the radar. Haven't gotten any contracts or anything along those lines, but definitely gonna see and talk to the manager, talk to everybody, look everything over, and if it makes sense, it makes sense. I want to do it. And at the end of the day, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, aside from the financials, what really draws me to actually committing and stepping on the mat is how the level of the competitors out there. That was the reason why we went to CGI over ADCC in the first place, because I felt like all the hefty names, most of the hefty names had already kind of gone to CGI. I saw the bracket, and I'm like, okay. And then on top of that, of course, the million, right? So it's a no-brainer after that. But so we'll see this year. A lot of the bigger names and everyone kind of seems to be going to ADCC. Maybe that's the call. Maybe if everyone's kind of coming to CGI, maybe then that's the call.
Yeah. I don't want to put you in the crosshairs of a bad situation, Kate, but I know you've spoken about this very openly and honestly in the past. I think last year you talked about this, about the use of performance enhancing drugs in jiu-jitsu. And I'm sure you saw last year, Mikey Musumeci came out very vehemently saying we got to get it out of our sport. It's bad. And then Gordon Ryan, who is kind of one of the big representatives, kind of like him on the other side, hey, it's not illegal. I think Gordon maybe likes to, have some fun with some needles, whatever. I don't know what's going on over there. But I know you've spoken out very openly and honestly said, like, it is a problem. So can I imagine you do kind of side more with the Mikey Musumeci side of saying, well, we need to clean up our sport? Because while Gordon's not wrong to say it's not illegal, but just because it's not illegal doesn't mean it's not cheating. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah. There's a lot of different arguments and different things you can make to justify it or whatever, and in almost every single other sport that I know, it's not legal, right. And, or any real sport, it's not legal. And I think there's just so much that goes, it's deeper than just like the act of it. I think a lot of people don't understand the generations, that the influence they're setting for the younger generations. And then that's only became worse and worse and worse. And then I've seen it firsthand where you see 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds are taking steroids and you're just like, dude, it's not healthy. And like, and longevity, it's not, like the reason why Gordon's only competing, every 2 years right now, or once a year, or whatever it is, because he's like, if right now, I think he's doing something with Mikey Musumeci and him are possibly going to do some sort of like a, what is it, like a ultimate fighter type things for jiu-jitsu, possibly, I believe. And I think he can't fight because of health issues. Like at the end of the day, you can never fight because of health issues. And then you can only, get one camp every year, every 2 years to kind of be healthy for. I just think it's just not just the way the body should be ran. I think, he's in his 20s and he's the same age as Mikey Musumeci per se, and you can kind of look at the two physical states and then kind of give your it's like I said, to each their own. Everyone could do whatever they want. It's just kind of, it's just frustrating when I'm out there slapping hands with my opponent. I know I'm doing everything that I can possibly do naturally, and I'm looking at this guy, and they may be putting half of the work, or even if it's not even the workload, but just seeing how much. Just they got 3 traps on each one of their traps and 2 lats, and you're just like, here we go, let's fight. It's kind of how, a long answer. I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I feel like that's also how my brothers and I style has kind of been deemed sometimes as, you could say, scrambly, or just people will say, certain ways to describe our game. And I think it's not even so much that our game is just we're looking for crazy scrambles and trying to just snatch stuff. People don't really realize is every act that we're doing is fighting around strength, because we can't go head to head with these guys for strength. When you're technical and you have another technical guy, and this guy takes steroids and all these different strengths, it's going to be, that much harder to catch back up. Right. So not only are you going to have to catch up by, working on your technique over time, you're going to have to figure out how to fight around that strength. And the only way you can fight around strength is you got to be like water, and that's the way my brother and I try to operate. But yeah, sorry, super long answer.
No, you're absolutely right. And like I said, it's just like, it's like in a jiu-jitsu match, like if a guy eye pokes you, like, maybe it's accidental, maybe it's not, but it is an advantage when they do that to you. And again, like steroids, you mentioned, wrecks your body. It absolutely does. I mean, there's a reality that, like, especially younger, like when you start taking steroids in your early 20s, like that's when you're at your physical peak. You shouldn't need steroids in your early 20s. Like that's, so, and you're right, absolutely wrecks your body. And so I know you've spoken about this before, but I know that like Mikey spoke out about it, got a lot of attention, and Gordon kind of came back at him. And I've talked to Gordon. I like Gordon. I don't have a problem with him, but I think it's just, just because you're allowed, or just because there's no testing, doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it should be allowed. I know, obviously, I mean, you get tested now for MMA, so I mean, obviously, you're going through that. Not that you've ever done it before, but yeah, it's just unfortunate because, like I said, no matter how you look at it, it's still an advantage, and you don't want to do anything unnatural, so you're going to be at a disadvantage.
A 1,000,000%. Yeah, it's just the way it is. I think the biggest advantage for them is just how much they can train. Like me, 3-4 training sessions throughout the week, and I'm already like over it and like feeling it. These guys are training like 3 sessions a day, which is crazy. So that's one of the big things. And yeah, it's kind of a topic that I would talk a lot about back then, like a year or so ago. And now I'm at a point where I was almost feel like I was getting backlash for like talking against it, in a sense where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to kind of take the backseat, and just my brother and I, we're going to do things the way we believe that it should be done naturally. And we know that when we get those results, when we get those W's, we enjoy all of it with zero sense of like, I wonder if I could have done that without steroids, or, all those different, I wonder if they asked them those questions, because yeah, I could never live like that. But yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, like a decade ago, a decade from now, when you're married and got kids and you no longer do jiu-jitsu, or 15 years from now, you can look back and say, I did it the right way. It kind of reminds me of baseball, like when Barry Bonds was hitting all these home runs, and it wasn't illegal at the time, but now how do we view that? Like, no one views him in the same light as we do current baseball players, because we know he was on something. So, like it or not, like, I'm sure 20 years from now, you can sit with a clean conscience knowing you did it the right way.
Exactly. 100%.
Okay. Well, Kade, man, I'm excited to see you back in there. I know the fight is just days away, man. Obviously, I'm looking forward to whatever you do in 2025, excuse me. 2024 was pretty good for you, 2-0 in MMA, $1 million CGI. So if you can top that in 2025, it's going to be even better, right?
Thank you so much. We're always trying, right? That's always the goal. It's going to be difficult, but we're always working towards that. So yeah, thank you so much, David.
Absolutely, Kade. Well, again, best of luck in the fight, man. Not that you need it, and look forward to seeing you back in action in a matter of days.
My man, always a pleasure talking. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Talk soon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.